Come on. There we go. Ew, Red Hot Chili Peppers? Why is there never anything good on the radio? Don't these red lights know that I'm on a mission? I mean, in the very least, I have an opportunity to stop driving and continue filming. Shakazing! Damn it. How the fuck does this town expect me to go 30 when I'm going downhill? You're right. Some thoughts should stay inside thoughts, but it's not like I'm not still making myself go 30. It's just a pain in the ass. Yeah, hi, can I get an Impossible Whopper with cheese, no pickle?
Impossible Whopper with cheese, no pickle, you said?
Yep.
Anything else?
Not going to get you to do a bunch of shots. That's my boy. Fate integrated wood in order to save money right from town to town.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Jakel, and today I am eating an Impossible Whopper. Why am I doing this? Because it's something that Mark did on Unus Annus. Unus Annus, MEMENTO Mori. 1 year, remember death. For those of you who don't know, Unus Annus was a channel that existed here on YouTube for only 1 year. It was a project where the faces of this channel were Mark Fishbach of Markiplier and Ethan Nestor of Crank Gameplays. For 1 year, they uploaded one video every single day to Unus Annus. Well, they did certain things, such as try the Impossible Whopper. Such as try to get Ethan to build a doghouse, even though he had no idea how to work any tools. And in the very first upload, they told everybody what they were going to do, and that at the end of the 1 year, they were going to delete the entire channel live. That's why Unus Annus, 1 year, was the name of the entire fucking channel. And at this point, October 22nd, 2023, we are almost coming up to the 3-year anniversary on November 15th of this year, 2023. And I have been getting very nostalgic and very sentimental. It's actually really fucking good. So in this video, I want to talk about Unus Annus. I want to talk about the influence that it has left behind, how it has influenced me, and what I think, as a content creator myself, the legacy of Unus Annus very well might be. I'm going to go finish this, and then we're going to get on with the video. Let's start with when I was first introduced to Unus Annus. When I had first seen Unus Annus, it had been about a month after a grippy sock vacation, because most of 2019 was lost in dealing with psychosis, or what some of the spiritualists might call spiritual psychosis. Actually, no, I take it back. It was legitimate psychosis. I was misdiagnosed and therefore mismedicated, and then wound up suffering medically induced psychosis, which is a state of really seeing and hearing things that aren't there. That's what my 2019 was, and this is where I was at when Unus Annus had first started airing, about a month after my grippy sock vacation, when that was finally able to end. So by the time Unus Annus came into my life, I definitely needed a new comfort show. While I was going through it in 2019, I had already watched plenty of Markiplier's content, plenty of Jacksepticeye and PewDiePie, namely when they were doing their Minecraft series. That became a very strong source of comfort for me, but it was still tainted with all of the emotions of going through what I had gone through for most of that year. Here comes a show, something where every day for a year, something was going to be uploaded. I had something to look forward to that I can guarantee bank on that could help me get through my day. Some of the first ones that I remember watching were cooking with sex toys, which instantly got taken down and then put back up, and then it was up now without the monetization and was severely suppressed in the algorithm. I also remember watching an escape room that they went through that was very horror themed, and that was a lot of fun to get to watch. I remember as they were going up and down Mark's house that was now suddenly supposedly haunted, where they were at least positing that it was haunted, and you know, I'm pretty sure it was more for a bit and it was a parody, but it was still a lot of fun to watch. But the episode that helped me to realize that I was going to be here watching the show for the long haul was not when they were trying to identify memes, was not when they were trying to figure out how to use a neti pot. It was not even when they promised us the pea sauna. They did a Viking funeral. And what this really meant was there were boxes laying around Mark's house, and Ethan constructed a coffin out of these boxes, taped them together, shoved Mark in where Mark was doing his goddamnedest to make sure not to move and pretend to be a dead body as this fake box coffin got sent down the stairs with him in it and his feet just kicking out. And then him just groaning in pain as he has continued to be carried out the house into the backyard and out the pool where he was going to float. And Ethan took a Nerf gun, took the dart, tried his best to set it on fire, and shot out into the pool where Mark's Viking funeral was taking place. That was the moment I realized I was going to stick around. Then something happened that the greatest majority of us could not have accounted for, not even Unus Annus, and that would be the COVID-19 lockdowns. Let's turn the clock back to March of 2020. COVID-19 is what everybody is talking about because it is a virus that is sweeping the entire globe. People are getting sick with incredibly intense flu-like symptoms. Some people are dying from it. Some people are just getting the sniffles. There's a lot of COVID deniers. There are a lot of people throwing a fit, and there are a lot of people that are getting enraged at the people that are throwing a fit. But everything is changing. Everybody's going on lockdown together. Whether you're cooperating or not was completely up to the individual. Everything was changing. A lot of us knew that nothing was going to be the same after the fact. Something that I thought was really interesting to see was watching our favorite social media personalities go on lockdown as well. In some way, it helped a lot of people. I know it did for me. Make us feel like we're not alone. We're in this together. And in that, there was this weird, unique kind of solidarity that made it a lot easier to bear. And once again, every single day, Unus Annus was there. But just like everybody else, they had to acclimate to the changing condition. So they were now doing Skyped-in calls where it was sort of like the dual window where Mark was at home, Ethan was at home, and they were video calling to each other in order to continue doing Unus Annus, to stay committed that every single day was going to give us one episode of Unus Annus. And they did some really interesting stuff. It was a really cool way of seeing how they overcame this and found new, unique, and inventive ways to continue on with Unus Annus. There was something else that happened in this that I don't think anybody really anticipated. That was TikTok. TikTok, up until a certain point, shortly before that, was formerly Musical.ly. Then ByteDance bought Musical.ly, and before lockdowns, on YouTube, TikTok was just kind of a cringe place where a bunch of goobers were coming together doing cringe-worthy things for the internet. There was no notoriety. Most of what people knew about TikTok was kids being goobers and rednecks being rednecks, and that was it. People going there to be cringe and nothing else. And boy, were we proven wrong when we started flocking to TikTok and now had a greater range of accessibility to one another. And of course, since Unus Annus was right there with us, we were talking about Unus Annus. Then something happened in my own personal life. I was reunited with my headmates on March 26th of 2020. We were on lockdown. I felt safe enough to actually not have to deal with people. And then one day, I'm sitting there watching Anthony Padilla's I Spent a Day With series, and it was I spent a day with 3 DID systems. And now I'm going over it, and I am comparing myself and my experience, remembering fresh in my mind some of the weird things that had happened the year before in 2019 when I was dealing with psychosis. And oh my God, I am a system. And that changed everything for me personally. I spent the next 6 weeks in a constantly dissociated state as an amnesia wall came down and I started interacting with my headmates. And in this time, I was no longer able to upload content here on YouTube nearly as consistently. So once again, during this time, everything was changing on a social level, on a global level, and on my own personal level. By now, Unus Annus had become a regular comfort show for me. It was a go-to, it was something that I looked forward to every single day, and I just felt like I wasn't alone. Even though there is definitely that parasocial relationship, and I didn't go out of my way to cross that boundary, it was something that was there. And I was going through lockdowns, they were going through lockdowns. The world was talking about it, they were talking about it. And something started happening. It became a source of comfort. It became a regular, steady, consistent thing that I could rely on. So as I am going through this mental health experience, starting to get to know my headmates, a whole amnesia wall coming down, getting used to the new situation where I'm just up in arms and remembering all kinds of things, and parts of my mind are going back to where they had not been for several years at that point. I was able to look back at Unus Annus because at this point there had been almost 6 months of Unus Annus. And I'm going back to rewatch it because, hey, I remember that day, this episode was from that day and it makes me remember it. Or hey, this was a really good episode, I'm going to rewatch it. Now it wasn't just looking forward to what was going to come the next day. It was replayability and having another show to go back and watch that already had feelings of comfort tied into it. And that's when I realized this actually is going to be gone. In hindsight, it would almost appear that some people are surprised that they actually went through it. Some people appear to think that through the entire time they were not going to do it, or they were going to re-upload everything or something, but they said it from day one and they continued on with it. When it was down, it was staying down, and it was going to go down on the 1 year of Unus Annus being a thing. And that is exactly what they did. This is something that they continued to bring forth to us, kept reminding us. Unus Annus. 1 year. Memento Mori. Remember death. Every single episode started with the chant, Unus Annus, Unus Annus. and in the background there was a spiral of black and white, and zooming in was a countdown from the moment of uploading until the day the channel was going to die. And something about the theme of the passage of time, and that time will bring all things to pass, consistently was drilled into our heads the entire time we were watching this channel. It wasn't a secret. They were upfront about it, and it paid off, and they talked about it all the time, even to such a point that they bought a custom coffin for the death of the channel. And this was early on. This was before lockdown. This was like before Christmas, I think. They were going to kill the channel. It was only going to be up for a year. They really brought forth the themes and the emphasis of death. And they were always playing on this theme, this motif of black and white. Sometimes they would get dressed up not as Mark and Ethan, not Markiplier and Crank gameplays, but Unus and Annus. They became their own characters within the show itself, where sometimes they were Mark and Ethan, sometimes they were Unus and Annus. Mark with the white suit and the black tie, Ethan with the black suit and the white tie. This would really come to play even in minor moments and throwaway scenes throughout episodes, where you had the full screen 16:9 or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden the tone would change, the music would shift, their faces would get serious, and now it's in letterbox, and it zooms in on them, and it's like, remember death, remember time is slipping away, remember that everything will come to an end, just like this channel. And then would go back to normal. They would meme it up, they would play it up and ham it up. But it was something that was drilling us in the face, pelting us almost every episode. This channel was going to die. We only had a limited amount of time to enjoy this shit. And at this point, there was no turning back. How often do we take things for granted? Actually, let me try to rephrase that. How many things in our life have become so commonplace that they are just a part of the tapestry of the things that paint who we are? Take, for example, the media that we consume, whether that be movies or TV shows or video games, or let's think even people in our lives, our loved ones, the pets that have always been there. These are the things that we come to experience as a part of our lives, the things that are just almost always going to be there. Now imagine if your favorite TV show or your favorite video game was no longer there. You could no longer stream it, you no longer had access to it, all you had left of it is the memories of that thing. This is exactly what Unus Annus was setting us up for. And when it comes to pets and loved ones or celebrities that die suddenly, we can't really predict that. We can't act as if we know when it's going to happen. Even if the person that does pass, it wasn't exactly a surprise because of the things leading up to their passing, we still can't exactly know when it's going to happen. But with Unus Annus, we knew exactly when it was going to go down. We knew exactly when the channel was going to die. Even with the Unus and Annus outfits, the white suit with the black tie or the black suit with the white tie, they looked like funeral attendants. They looked like ushers or pallbearers. It was not subtle that death was imminent. And I think it was around this time in late spring to early summer of 2020 that I started to realize that Unus Annus had already become a part of the tapestry of my life. As I already said, it was one of those comfort shows. It was one of those things that I could go back to, and even if I didn't have the luxury to view it every day, when I did have the time, I could go back and catch up. Unus Annus was on my mind. Unus Annus was everywhere I looked. People on TikTok were talking about it. People on YouTube were talking about it. My own family was talking about it. My headmates were talking about it. And now, Unus Annus was making its way into my dreams. At some time in mid-June of 2020, I had a dream where all of a sudden I was in this sort of barren, deserted area, and sand was blowing everywhere. And somehow I had this feeling that the sand that was pelting me in the face was the sands of time. As I am traveling along in this dream, I come up to a bridge, just sort of like a bypass bridge, one of those overhead bridges that are more for travelers, people that use sidewalks, that way they can get over busy streets. There was one of these that was in my hometown where I grew up, and this was exactly the one that was in my dream. So as I'm walking up to the foot of the stairway to lead up to it, I see a young child laying on the ground. And then I realized that this child had passed away. And I didn't know what to do about it, and I was starting to become lucid enough to realize that I was dreaming, because this isn't something that's in my normal wheelhouse. And regardless, I go up, and now I'm on the overpass, and I look down, and I can barely see the street below me because of the sand that's blowing in my face. And I look over, placing my hand on the rail to realize that in real time, the metal of the rail handbar is starting to deteriorate and rust and fall apart, and now the entire overpass is falling apart, and I'm falling with it, and then nothing. And right before I wake up, Unus Annus, Unus Annus. As soon as Mark and Ethan were able to start making videos together again, meaning that they could actually be in the same space after lockdowns again, they just went full force. They gave us the promised peace, Anna. They went out and started booking events to do. And honestly, the more that I'm remembering and trying to think of things, the more it is being realized by myself that I'm not sure the order of events in which things took place. I don't remember if the drum lessons and glass blowing was before or after lockdowns, but I do know that they started doing things like learning how to breathe fire, or walk on glass, or was it hot coals? Whichever it was, they were hiring people or booking slots to learn how to do some of these neat, cool, fun things. They also spent a day doing mime lessons. That was actually a lot of fun, I'm not gonna lie. At some point closer toward the end of the summer, they did something that lasted either 1 or 2 weeks, I believe, and that was Camp Unus Annus, where they were still doing a bunch of the same type of things, but now it was summer, so they were at summer camp. And this is where things started to get a little bit meta. Things started getting a little bit weird. Such as when they are trying to start a fire inside of the cabin, and then Ethan's character, I forget, was it Unus or Annus, walks up in the black suit and the white tie, even though Mark and Ethan are both inside, walks up to the glass, puts a hand on the glass, then walks away. Things got really kind of spooky the closer we got to the end of the channel. Also, the themes of life and death never really went away, even if the whole episode wasn't necessarily about a death-themed motif. They would do things such as sensory deprivation tank, simulating what it might be like when everything is gone. Then again, if memory serves correctly, I think they did the sensory deprivation tank in Mark's bathroom upstairs, if I recall correctly. And then somehow that turned into childbirth simulator, which then turned into putting electrodes on their no-no squares to simulate the sensations of childbirth. Oh god, that one was a riot. That one was, wow, worth remembering. As I'm filming this, I am realizing that I'm having difficulties remembering full episodes as opposed to just bits and pieces of things that I can't remember what that was from, what order that episode took place in, where in the timeline something happened. It's just a collection of memories. Some things are very clearly obvious, such as when they tried doing a week of the presidential fitness challenges, and it resulted in Mark punching a hole through the wall and breaking his pinky. I remember that. I don't remember when it happened, though. All in all, eventually the fateful day would come where they would have a 12-hour live stream, where at the end of the live stream, they deleted the channel. We all watched this live stream, people coming in left and right. I think even at some point, the chat crashed. I might be recalling things incorrect, don't quote me on that. But there was some sort of technical issue that took place that prevented it from streaming the way that it should have. Or maybe my own memory is just inserting things for whatever reason. Regardless, those who were there watched as they said, "It's over." And then the stream ended. And then people went back and refreshed their feed and it was gone. There were a lot of people clearly that were in shock and awe. I think some people didn't realize that they were actually going to go through with it. I think there were definitely people who, even in the Unus Annus subreddit, were theorizing that it wasn't actually going to go. Too much lore had been built. There were little Easter eggs here and there. What about that one time where Ethan's character came up and touched the glass? And it was still gone. Even to the point where, I forget if it was on Film Theory or Game Theory, but MatPat made a video talking about the hidden lore of Unus Annus. And this was something that was going on in these subreddits and those communities where people were finding these little nuggets of Easter eggs, making it seem like there was going to be something continuing thereafter. And yet it wasn't. And then some people thought that they were going to put it back up at the 1 year mark. And instead, on the 1 year mark after the taking down, the death of the channel, we had a video from Mark and a separate video from Ethan where they went to the the coffin and gave a little eulogy. And I watched Mark's first and it was emotional. Don't get me wrong. But the way that Ethan did that memorial video, I fucking bawled my eyes out. Because I was one of those people that I knew this was going to happen. I had this realization halfway through, knowing that at some point it was going to be gone and it was going to be no more. And I hadn't really thought about it since. I hadn't really thought about how much I missed it until Ethan's 1 year anniversary, death-iversary video. At that point, a whole year had passed since the death of Unus Annus. And this was the first time that I really started reflecting on what had happened in my own life in that year. For starters, my relationship started falling apart. I didn't know anything that was going to happen from that point. It became obvious to me that my spiritual and magical practice was also going off the rails. And then by the end of that calendar year, so by the beginning of 2021, I was single, going through a divorce. I had come to realize that I was not who I thought I was as an alter in my DID system, but in fact I was the former protector of my system. And that at some point in 2016, before my kid was even born, was when the host switch had taken place. So now, even all the way back to the beginning of this channel here, I wasn't who I thought I was. Then after a few months, I wound up dating again, wound up finding another significant other. We got really close really quick, and then by the end of that summer, I realized I was going to have to move, but not before the late spring of 2021. I started uploading to the witchy side of TikTok and started regularly uploading consistently. So now I'm pretty much not even doing YouTube anymore. All of my focus and effort is moving to my TikTok, and I start making a following and a platform there. I've got a completely different significant other. Things were turbulent with that entire situation that I'm not going to get into here. A lot had happened. A lot had changed since Unus Annus had been taken down. And not to mention how much changed in the duration of Unus Annus. I already hit most of the major points in my own personal timeline while I'm talking about Unus Annus as I remember it, as I'm recording here. And anything else I feel is kind of superfluous information, but since Unus Annus had started uploading, I realized that I was a part of a DID system. The COVID-19 virus had swept the globe, the lockdowns had commenced, lockdowns had ended, everybody flocked to TikTok. Literally nothing was the same. From the start of Unus Annus to the end of Unus Annus, everything was now completely different. And I think I need to grant some brevity, because yes, that was a whole year. That was a whole year where we have a marker of start to finish. 1 calendar year, which is a long time, and I don't think people realize how long a year actually is, and in a year, a lot can happen. And then I realized that again, on the second death anniversary of Unus Annus. A whole nother year had passed, and everything had changed, and nothing was the same. Unus Annus, 1 year. Alright, hold up. The video is about to take a brief detour, but bear with me for just a moment. Hi, my name is Ethan. I am the person behind the social media persona known as Jakel, and I'm going to be open for just a couple of minutes. So, I've been filming this video so far, start to finish. I don't have a script, I just know what I want to say because I've thought about this topic a lot. And since I've done that for all but a small handful of videos in my entire uploading history here, I've got a little bit of practice in doing this. Every video that I make, I have thought out, but not really scripted. And even though this is familiar territory for me, this video is a different kind of video for me, and I'm gonna explain. For the greatest majority of the last 2.5 years, I have been uploading primarily to the witchy side of TikTok. I've got practice in that. I know how to navigate that terrain. I know how to handle that community. And because I am so familiar with that bullshit, I have once again quit recently. And I am used to being in this mindset where whether I am on TikTok or I am here on YouTube, I'm talking to my audience, whoever that might be. But this one's a little bit different because I'm not just talking to my audience, I'm talking to everybody else who might see this that also remembers Unus Annus. And there is a lot of weight on my shoulders with that. First of all, I have no idea how to navigate the Unus Annus community. And as I said earlier in this video, I myself am having degrading memories since it's been almost 3 years at the point of my filming this. And underneath this exterior is a deeply traumatized girl who is equal parts angry little bean, while at the same time a purely caffeinated cinnamon roll. Either I get upset and pissed off very easily, or I cry. There are no in-between spots. It is either freaking out or sobbing. And this genuinely kind of fucking scares me. In the very least, I find it rather intimidating because I am talking to an entire community who also remembers and maybe even grieve the channel that I'm talking about, and I don't want to piss off a community when it is the first time I am waving my hand and saying, "Hi, I was also there." Because even though this isn't scripted, I know where this video is going, and it's going to get a little personal. Ultimately, what I am trying to do with this is talk about how I remember Unus Annus, and invite everybody to come down memory lane with me, while at the same time I know I am only a single individual person talking about only my experience. And in sharing my experience and how I remember, maybe there's something in that that others can relate to. So although I am intimidated by the fact that I'm going to be talking to a community that I don't normally talk to, with a bunch of faces that I've never seen before, with the looming threat that somebody might give me a wall of comment full of spite and vinegar, maybe, just maybe, in the end I will be pleasantly surprised and I might wind up making a few parasocial friends or acquaintances. Who knows? At the same time, I am saying this here and now. I am a little intimidated. I'm a little bit scared, because I don't know how this is going to play out. But I do know what I'm going to say next, and that is, Unus Annus has a lot of similarities with the Black Parade.
Wait, I'm not going to tell you anything, but there is something here in...
The Black Parade is an album released by the band My Chemical Romance on October 23rd, 2006. My birthday, by the way. And ever since then, it has left a legacy that those who remember the Black Parade will remember, and those who weren't there will only have an approximation of what actually took place. Not a lot of people knew what the hell was going on at the VMAs when My Chemical Romance, performing as the Black Parade, performed the Welcome to the Black Parade song live on a fucking rooftop, and nobody knew what the hell was going on, and is Gerard Way blonde, and why is his hair short? And, hold that thought. This would be the start of a several-year-long project where the band My Chemical Romance was performing as the Black Parade. Hang on, what did I do with it? It even says so right here in the pamphlet. My Chemical Romance appearing as the Black Parade. And the stuff to come out of this project was legendary. The way that they would perform on stage, the way that everything was different, themes playing on the motif of death and people passing. This album is a concept album where from start to finish it tells a story about a person who is passing on, and then along the way, the struggle of moving on, and then taking care of unfinished business, while during Welcome to the Black Parade, the person is finally able to move on, but there are still several different songs of coming to terms with being dead and facing death, all the way up to famous last words, when finally the person has had enough and is finally able to move on. The entire album tells a story, but at the same time, each song could be a standalone track that doesn't need to fit into a larger narrative. Each song is good enough standing on its own, but when you put it all together, it tells a greater story. And every time they performed live, not as My Chemical Romance, but as the Black Parade, they performed this story. Unus Annus was a project started on YouTube by Mark Fishbach of Markiplier and Ethan Nestor of Crank Gameplays, where for every day for an entire year, they would upload one video every single day to the Unus Annus channel. Throughout the entirety of this experience, they would lean heavily on the themes of death. When they first uploaded announcing the project, not very many people knew what the hell was going on, but in that very first video, they told us exactly what they were going to do, and they played the parts, not of Crank Gameplays or Ethan Nestor, not of Markiplier or Mark Fishbach, but as Unus and Annus. Each Unus Annus video is fine standing alone as an individual piece, or it can be inserted in the part of the greater narrative being told, which is the performance of Unus Annus. And now that everything has been said and done, only those who were there will be able to remember it properly, and will only continue to live on in the memories of those who were around to witness it. Are you seeing what I'm getting at here? There are similarities between the two. Now, admittedly, there are some obvious and stark differences between Unus Annus and the Black Parade. For starters, unless you find some way to access an earlier time in the internet, Unus Annus is gone, other than a few clips in compilation videos here and there. The Black Parade, however, you can have this wherever you can still find CDs, or in the much more popular retro media, the vinyl record, you can get yourself a copy of this. And even if you can't, every single track is available on multiple streaming platforms, including but not limited to YouTube itself. The difference between social media entertainment and music, the difference between Mark and Ethan versus My Chemical Romance, there are a number of differences, but something that is in common is that they came together to do something different than that was their norm, and they made a limited run of a performance type of art. And something else that is going to be held in common is the way that we will come to remember it, versus those who come to appreciate it later will come to remember it. In the later portion of 2016, I was going through a very rough time. I was living in an apartment where mold had completely overrun the place. We'd lost our jobs, we'd lost our health, we'd lost our sanity. And one of the shining moments in that entire year was the 10th anniversary of the Black Parade, which is how I was able to get my hands on this 10th anniversary Black Parade commemorative jacket. Along with this came a 10th anniversary album where a different artist was doing a cover of each and every single song on the album. And I had my first true emo boomer moment, which was hearing 21 Pilots perform Cancer. I was not happy with it. So as a result of this, I had found my way into Tumblr once again, even though it had been a couple of years since I had graced Tumblr with my presence. And what I witnessed was a scene that had drastically changed in the 2 years since I had entered Tumblr. I was going through different blogs, seeing things about My Chemical Romance and the 10th anniversary that was coming up and we were experiencing. Also, when the hell did Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, and My Chemical Romance become the emo trinity? This was something that was new to me, and since I was somebody who was there during that time as a mid-age millennial myself, I witnessed the emo movement as it came to the Midwest, took over every angsty teen that didn't quite fit in, and had a staple in all of the hot topics, and I was wondering, where were the other bands? Where was Paramore? Where was Devil Wears Prada? Where was Chiodos? Where was the Used? Where were these other people being represented in the emo scene? They weren't there. And then I realized, the world had moved on without me. Something that I think often gets lost in the ways of traditional media is that we tend to think that the power of oral tradition has long since been something to observe in archaeological finds, to reference the way that ancient cultures and societies did things to hold their mythos and their folklore together, but this simply is not the case. The truth of the matter is, that shit still happens. It's just now changed for the times. Instead of talking about the Fae people and talking about the elemental spirits and the gods that came down to commune with us one fine, intoxicated evening when we were at our worst in our life. Now we're talking about the music that we wind up listening to. We talk about the media that we consume. We talk about the books that we read and the form of entertainment. And when an entire scene has the biggest part of its golden era, and then it is made such an impact that people are talking about it and handing those stories down, and those stories get spread far and wide, the scene changes. And that is still the power of oral tradition being passed down, but now we are typing it down. Now we are calling it down. Now, it's still the same thing, and the way that we remember it when we were there is different than the people who are now going to recall it if they were not there. And I was witnessing this happen to me in front of my very eyes. And now, admittedly, we do have more of an archaeological record of My Chemical Romance versus Unus Annus. For one, again, we still have physical copies of the Black Parade media. We still have the access to stream them from the internet. As to where Unus Annus only lives on in clips and stories and memes that have stood the test of time and are still being shared around. Merch that has stood the test of time from when people were buying up merch from Camp Unus Annus, from when people bought them in the sale that was going on that crashed the entire server for the site. I remembered what it was, by the way. It wasn't the chat, it was the store that crashed. There is merch, there is memorabilia, there are ways that we are going to remember Unus Annus, and the way that we remember My Chemical Romance, it would appear that it gives us a front seat. But what I'm talking about is having been there and lived through it, going to the shows, hearing about the shows as they were happening, seeing live things on social media as it was happening, hearing about it as it was happening. That is what is the same between My Chemical Romance, The Black Parade, and Markiplier and Crank gameplays with Unus Annus. And I think that it is incredibly fitting that with Unus Annus and the Black Parade, there were themes of death, and death being imminent, reminding us of our mortality, remembering that we only have a limited time before the things that we love are going to be gone, only to live on in the memory of the feelings that we had that once were. Because I've said this about My Chemical Romance, and I'll say it about Unus Annus. My Chemical Romance was one of the last great things to happen to rock and roll. Unus Annus was one of the last great things to happen to YouTube. In 2017, I came stumbling onto this platform in a Halloween vlog dressed as the Cat in the Hat, not realizing what kind of changing landscape of YouTube I was stumbling into. The age of YouTube that came to inspire me starts in about 2007. This is when we started seeing such characters as Kyle Monkey, granting us such hits as ADHD Hyperactive Chipmunk Part 2. We had such gems as Llamas with Hats, the Llama Song. You remember that one? Here's a llama, there's a llama, and another little llama. Funny llama, fuzzy llama, 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 duck. Just me? Fuck. Moving on. We also had the Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny. We had the Badger Song, and we also had Boots and Cats. Boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats and... This is the age of YouTube that I initially fell in love with, because only a couple years before that I would sit there with my mom's camcorder and just film myself goofing off, and YouTube seemed like the perfect place to be able to do that. However, I didn't really have internet access throughout most of high school, and by the time I was able to do that, I did not have my mom's camcorder. There was a lot that changed, and there were a lot of reasons as to why it took me a while to start making my own YouTube content. Also, in the aforementioned year previous, 2016, one of my go-to ways of coping with everything that was going on was watching YouTube until I fell asleep, and I came to enjoy such personalities as Rob Gaffigan, formerly known as Rob Dyke, Matthew Santoro, Destry Smith, Shane Dawson. You can see why some of these names might have a problem today. We've got to find ourselves now in about 2012, which is when we had one of the very first, most prominent changes to the YouTube algorithm, which is now that the platform changed from going by views and likes and comments, it was now going by watch time, which people that made the platform possible made it an actual business or job opportunity, such as Shane Dawson, Jax Films, Jenna Marbles, Matt G, people like that. Instead of getting engagement rated by views, it was being engaged and rated by runtime. This made it so they didn't get quite as much traction in the algorithm, and more prominent names started being shown, such as Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and PewDiePie. Because you see, something that all of these other names had in common was video game Let's Plays, where it was just their personality, their persona that they were bringing to their videos while they were playing video games. Now, people, which one of the greatest demographic at the time and probably still is, was teenagers, they were now playing video games vicariously through some of their most favorite personalities, and with that, aided in the culmination of longer watch time on videos. Because of this simple little shift, going from views and general engagement to watch time, whether we wanted it to or not, the entire platform was changing, almost overnight. So then there's me, in late 2017, coming to the platform, not knowing anything about anything, using equipment such as my phone and my then fiance's laptop, with all of the stunning capability of Windows Live Movie Maker, I started making content, lowbrow, low quality, and with very little skill that I had garnered, because this was the first time I ever tried doing something like this. I started in October of 2017. Then, in January of 2018, the now infamous Logan Paul video, where he went to Aokigahara, or much more inappropriately referred to as Suicide Forest. This was a media shitstorm where major news outlets were reporting on it, and all of the commentary channels were making videos about it. Even people that didn't do commentary were now talking about it because it enraged a great many people. YouTube had put people like Logan Paul and Jake Paul on a pedestal, giving them a platform, when previously they were on Vine. And then Vine shut down, and people like the Paul brothers and Gabby Hanna were now flocking to YouTube so they continue having a job, and this is what is now referred to as the Viner invasion, which is part 2 of the adpocalypse. Because of all of the negative media attention that was coming to YouTube, as well as a few other things such as ads being presented on problematic videos, such as Logan Paul's Aokigahara Forest video, a lot of advertising companies were pulling out of YouTube. And the way that people were able to make money on YouTube is by being eligible for the partner program and then making their videos so they could now have ads run at whatever point in the video, and from those ads, the creator was given a portion of the ad revenue in order to make money off of their content. So now, with a whole lot more people that were pulling their advertisements out of YouTube, a lot more people were now broke. And a lot of the people that were now upset about the adpocalypse were also the people that had been here for the last 6 to 10 years, that made the platform a possibility, made it possible, proved to the higher echelons of the YouTube overlords that this is a viable job, and that there's actual work put into it, and that independent content creators are people that are worth investing in. Not only were people who had done nothing wrong also being collectively punished, they were getting major violations for minor infractions and getting incredibly detrimental results in their videos, in the way that their content was able to be pushed in the algorithm, as to where people like Logan Paul were getting simple slaps on the wrist and were still able to have a huge name in YouTube. There was a lot of gossip, a lot of drama, a lot of slander, a lot of tea to be spilled. And the people that I was looking up to at the time and watching their content to find some kind of inspiration were now talking about these things. So as they're talking about these things, I am learning about YouTube history that I had never known before. I had come to learn now that there were multiple different ages of YouTube already at this point. I had come to learn some of the big names that made YouTube a viable platform. But in the shitstorm of everything that was taking place, there were a lot of people that were going out of their way to find some sort of dirt to dig up on a lot of different content creators, and now people were getting canceled left and right for things that they said years and years ago. And at the top of this list probably was Shane Dawson. And I think I make a mention of Shane Dawson Mostly because this was also around the same time his content was seeing a shift from food tasting videos and Spooky Boys content, which is more of the spookier content that he did with his friends Garrett and Drew, and also his now, I believe, husband Ryland got dragged into all kinds of sleepover parties and ghost hunting types of things. And this was something that really brought a lot of people into Shane's content, much like myself at the time. His content was shifting to now cover all of the drama going on, all of the things that were going on, such as a multi-part series on Jake Paul, such as covering all of the scandal going on with the TanaCon issue and trying to get to the bottom of it. There was a lot of content that Shane was making that, in spite of all of the dirt that was now being dug up on him, he was now finding a way to put himself front and center at the top of YouTube in the face of a lot of bullshit that was going on. At this point, I fear I might be getting carried away simply because I want to make note, one, I remember, and two, this is the environment and landscape of YouTube that I sauntered into dressed as the cat in the fucking hat. What a day it was for me. What a year it was for me. Hindsight's 20/20, but I gotta say, wow. I've been doing this for a long time, and a lot of it has to do with being discouraged by everything that I've stated here. Fact of the matter is, YouTube was changing, and it was in the process of changing. A lot of things had happened, a lot of different things had taken place, and the YouTube that I had come to love was now crumbling before my very eyes. Everything that I aspired to be was now breaking away at the very foundation. The content creators that I looked up to were now being outed and ousted for being actually genuinely harmful people. People such as Jeffree Star, Shane Dawson, Destry Smith now are outed as being genuinely problematic, if not downright predatory people. There is a fall from grace that has taken place with Ethan Klein of H3H3, and it was at the nexus point, almost the tail end of the nexus of all of this going on, that Unus Annus was able to rise at the forefront.
I was in that ultimate moment of terror that is the beginning of life. It is nothing. Simple, hideous nothing. The final truth of all things is that there is no final truth. Truth is what's transitory. It's human life that is real.
Unus Annus came to us at exactly the right time, through the exact right people, in the exact right place. And what I mean by that is, I don't think if anybody else had done something like that, if it had happened at any other point in YouTube history, that it would not have left the same impact the way that it did. Unus Annus came in not too long after I wound up going on a grippy sock vacation, and in that it became a great source of comfort. That was also right around the time that I had dedicated to start uploading content here regularly as a way to find a way to make distance between myself and what had happened in the year before that. Some of my own videos at the time that I was uploading were inspired by Unus Annus, such as doing the either.io, or there were a couple of videos I made that were the AI writing bot. That was because they did either that or something like that, and I took inspiration from that. And I was taking inspiration from that in the exact same way that I had taken inspiration from the other YouTubers that had inspired me previously. They held on to a particular spirit of YouTube that was always something that I loved about consuming YouTube content myself. They held on to something that represented a face of YouTube long after its expiration date. Nobody could have predicted the way that COVID-19 swept the globe, but when we went on lockdown, they went on lockdown with us. To this day, we all know somebody that was lost to COVID-19, or we know somebody who knows somebody that was lost to COVID-19. Even if it did only affect some people in a minor way, it still took the lives of a great many people. There are a lot of people also, aside from that, courtesy of the incredibly sophisticated algorithm that TikTok has, they started learning a lot about themselves, realizing that they were queer, or realizing that they were polyamorous, or realizing that they are trans. I'm one of those people. I realized and came to terms with that I am a trans feminine non-binary person. A lot changed. A lot happened. We started viewing the way that we see the world and the economy differently because we saw with our own eyes and in our own direct firsthand experience that jobs don't need to be the way that they are. We can still do work and function and keep the economy going with different standards of labor put in place. But that's not the way that people want to do things. That's not the way that companies want to do things. A lot of us changed at the same time. And that all took place while Unus Annus was uploading. The last time I really started thinking about Unus Annus was when we were thinking that TikTok was going to be taken away. They even brought the CEO of TikTok to Congress in order to talk to him, and wow, we just saw how incompetent Congress was as a result. We got to see how incompetent our lawmakers really are. And with the realization that I might not have the form of media that had become one of my greatest comforts in the last couple of years, a lot of those same feelings were starting to come up. A lot of the same facing mortality was starting to pop up in my own life. And this was exactly right around the same time I made my last YouTube video when I still lived in the last place. And then shortly after that, I moved into this place. And I still struggled. I faced a lot of burnout. First, having been making a lot of daily interaction videos over on my TikTok. Second, it takes a lot of energy to pack and move and unpack. And I am physically disabled, and that took a lot out of me. But because TikTok had become my job, I put myself to the standard to come back and continue doing what I was doing. I started talking more about social media and how the witchy side of TikTok is still social media, and it functions like social media. It is a social media platform where basically the witchy side of TikTok is a fandom event, and Witch Talk is the con that everybody congregates at. And boy, oh boy, did those videos just flop in the water. They stayed dead, belly down, floating down Schitt's Creek. And then something interesting happened. Anthony Padilla and Ian Heckox had bought Smosh back. Life is a cosmic joke, and I don't get the punchline. Before we come to the conclusion of this video, I want to bring up another channel that at one point was very near and dear to me, and it already gave me the experience of no longer having a channel that once was incredibly meaningful for me.
Hello all, welcome to the Boo Review, where we review haunted and paranormal activities for you. My name is Jared.
And I'm AJ.
And this over here is Nathan. Hi.
Hi, Nathan.
Do you like things of a paranormal nature? Do you like arbitrary review scores? Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Boo Review. My name is Jared. That's AJ. And over here is Nathan.
The Boo Review is a channel that started uploading on April 1st of 2015 and continued going for several years. In their run history, they wound up covering a wide variety of topics, all based on the idea of viewers sending them in clips to review on a rating scale of 1 to 7, which they claim to be the most arbitrary numbered rating system out there. They would wind up trying out many different themes and categorize them by topic and subject. Something they did their best to do regularly was a monthly recap, which was the best of that they personally enjoyed out of the months sent to them, as well as top 5s and top 10s. They also took the time to do specials and asides in order to engage with their audience, such as their 100th and 200th episode Q&As, and this helped build an audience where the followers were now participating in the personal memes, as well as the ongoing things happening within the personal lives of Jared, AJ, and Nathan. Even though they never broke into top-tier YouTuber stardom, they were able to create a very dedicated fan base, I myself being one of these people of that fan base. It really captured a spirit of YouTube that represented the paranormal community, talking about several different top 10 paranormal videos, as well as paranormal investigators, while maintaining their own stances as atheists who want to believe, and continuously satirizing the shit out of the entire paranormal community. Then one fateful day in September of 2019, it would be the last time we would see Jared, AJ, and Nathan upload anything. Slowly but surely, they found a way to incorporate green screen technology into their videos. That way, the videos that they were reviewing could play behind them, something that they had been playing with and tinkering around with for some time. However, this would be the first and last time we ever saw them do anything specifically quite like this. As time moved on, I would sit there anxiously and eagerly awaiting the next upload. Days turned into weeks, months turned into years, and eventually I had to come to terms with the fact that it was just over. It was done. And something that I found to be personally disheartening is the fact that there wasn't any updates. There was nothing that really gave us an inkling that they were going to stop uploading. The followers weren't given an explanation. The people who engaged didn't find anything to mention on social media. They were just gone. Having stumbled onto the channel the day after Halloween 2015, we had been engaging since early on in the channel, and they were there with us while we were watching all of their content as we moved into a new place. That new place was overrun with mold. We lost our jobs, our health, our sanity for that matter. I think I already said that at some point in this video. Regardless, this was also when Ethan, became the host of the system, and our former host no longer was the host. For 4 years, I watched this channel grow and change and become something that was a huge source of comfort, something that I could rely on, something that if not every day, then every week or every other week, there was guaranteed to be a new upload by the Boo Review, and in the times of absence, I could sit there and rewatch everything that they had uploaded. I could go back and revisit the ones that brought back a comforting feeling, and even after they stopped uploading, I still went back to do this, because the memories of when I would sit there before my own life had become so chaotic and so fraught with peril, the ups and downs on the roller coaster and everything that I'd been through in the last 10 years was made a little bit better by having the Boo Review to go to and to continue to watch, and then nothing. They owe me nothing. They owe none of their followers anything. It is well within their right to just up and stop uploading, and this is fine. Because it gave me an opportunity to learn how to cope with this kind of thing in my own way, and try to come to terms with it in my own time. And eventually, the pain would subside. Eventually, it would become easier to deal with the fact that the Boo Review just wasn't there. The ache that was in my heart that sometimes spontaneously made me burst into silent tears by the fact that I didn't have that comfort, that rock, that sturdy wall to lean up against when things were confusing and turbulent. Eventually, I found a way to move on, and the pain turned to numbness. And still to this day, nothing's really been able to fill the spot in my heart that the Boo Review once had. It's just a vague emptiness that just... I'm sorry, but what the fuck? Literally, last night, as I have concluded filming for that day, because this video has taken me 3 days to film, as soon as I set the drink down after saying my life is a cosmic joke and I don't get the punchline, as a result of Anthony Padilla and Ian Heckhock's buying back Smosh, I stop filming, walk out to have a cigarette, and see that announced on my Instagram. Let me tell you what, this threw me a curveball that I did not expect. But with that being said, let's get to the conclusion of this video. As I'm sitting here, knowing that this video is winding down, trying to come up to a conclusion to try and explain what I think might possibly be what the legacy of Unus Annus is, finally, it occurs to me. I already have an example. The same way that Unus Annus had sunk into my dreams, Unus Annus has found a way to seep itself into my content. This is fucking stupid. Nothing but a bunch of fucking edgelords self-filleting on a good job well done. Look at how evil. Look at how smart. Fucking UPG. I swear to God, once upon a time I actually used to know something about something, and now I'm just sitting here trying to clamor to an audience that doesn't give a good goddamn about anything, not knowing anything at all but slap them in the fucking face. Oh no, maybe it's about time I said fuck all this and started doing things my way again. What the fuck? Memento Mori. Remember death. Huh. Cheers to that. The legacy of Unus Annus is something that can only be best described as intangible, because it will only live on in the memories of those that were there to witness it. Because even though there will be relics such as merch and compilation clips videos, and if you want to go ahead and find a way to access it by turning the time back on your browser, then that is something that you can do. And I think one of the reasons that I spent so much time describing the YouTube climate as well as the time in history in which Unus Annus came to us was to describe, as best in my ability, how it could have only been successful in the way it was in the time that it came to us, the things leading up to it, and the happenstance of tragedy that happened during it. I also don't think it would have been successful if anybody else would have undertaken it. If it wasn't for the personalities and the notoriety of Mark Fishbach and Ethan Nestor, as well as the leadership of Amy behind the scenes, and the collaborative effort of everybody else who was a part of the production of Unus Annus. I don't think it would have worked any other way if anybody else would have done it. Also, we are never going to get another Unus Annus. Even if somebody else were to try to do it, let's assume for a moment that it wasn't seen as a disingenuous ripoff. The circumstances are completely different. The faces and talents behind it are different. It only would have worked in those situations with those circumstances arising. And something that I made note of a couple of times is that my memories are starting to fade of the exact details of Unus Annus, even though I was there. And since I am human, and I'm assuming you who watching this is human, if not now, then at some point I'm assuming that that degradation of memory and the true story being lost to time, therefore being subject to the contemporary and modern times version of oral tradition, eventually will skew Unus Annus into something that it never was before. Something that Unus Annus has in common with literally everything is that it died, and even if we're not dead yet, we are going to die someday. Death is a universal experience. And for those of us who have experienced the loss of a loved one or the loss of a pet or witness an emotional loss of a celebrity that we looked up to, what we have in us is what we can carry on about those people that are no longer here with us. What we have may not be the memories or the true story, but what we do have is the way that they made us feel and what we do with those feelings moving forward. And in that, their legacy carries on with us. And since I am on the topic, I think it is important to bring up the art and the practice of letting go. And this is not where I'm going to turn this into an advice column on how to cope with grief. But oftentimes, in the face of loss or in the face of tragedy, it's hard to let go of what once was. And when we have a hard time letting go, we're not able to see what's directly in front of us. Something that I made note of several times throughout the course of this video is that Unus Annus is the last great thing to happen to YouTube, and the Black Parade is the last great thing to happen to rock and roll. When that's not even true! It is important to note that the climate of YouTube has changed. YouTube is not the way that it was in 2017, and it's not the way that it was in 2011, and it's not the way that it was in 2007. YouTube is something now that stands unique, unlike anything that it was before, and something that Unus Annus granted us the privilege to try to overlook was that for 1 year we were able to focus on Unus Annus as it stayed the same when everything else around it was changing. Even if things within Unus Annus changed, Unus Annus was still Unus Annus. Everything else around it changed, so when Unus Annus was no longer there, we didn't have that metric to note. A constant, a consistent, an unchanging variable. We didn't have that rose-tinted glasses anymore. We were able to see and resume life, realizing just how much shit had changed in that year. And it is important to note that there was nothing like the Black Parade, and there has not been anything like the Black Parade since, and there will never be another Black Parade. There are bands that are kind of like that and do very similar things, and I'm going to point at the band Ghost. In 2016, the same year that I said for the first time that the Black Parade was the last great thing to happen to rock and roll, was the same year that I started listening to the band Ghost. At first I didn't understand it. At first I didn't get it. When I first started listening, there were two songs on the radio, Square Hammer and Saris, and they felt a little blended in together to me. Then finally, I bought the Meliora album, listened to it, and by the end of it, I was just like, huh, well, it is Scooby-Doo chase music, but it's really well done Scooby-Doo chase music. Shortly thereafter, the front person and the founder of the band Ghost was being sued by a former band member, and in the process of this entire thing, Tobias Forge was forced to show his face, and a lot of information was now made public that he was trying to keep secret, not because he had anything to hide, but because he was trying to keep up with the pageantry of the show. And that's when we start to realize, oh, there's a lot going on here. First of all, Tobias Forge has played the part of every single Papa Emeritus. He has also played the part of the nameless ghoul that did interviews, and the point of there being nameless ghouls and not named band members is because Tobias Forge is the one that's writing the music. He needs people to play on stage and perform his music with him. This is a huge stage setup. This is a huge performance. It is a concept band. And every single album gives us more, and every single tour gives us more lore. And yes, it's a band with lore. Everything that I loved about the Black Parade is being exemplified in the band Ghost. And I'm going to bring up the second, Sleep Token. Very similar setup. We don't know what they look like. We don't know who they are. We know that the front person goes by the name Vessel, and although it looks like a whole bunch of songs that are about a toxic relationship, if you dig into the lore just a little bit, you realize Vessel is the vessel for an ancient goddess of sleep, and these songs are about his relationship with this goddess of sleep, and it's definitely an interesting thing, and in its own way, I don't think Ghost or Sleep Token are inspired by My Chemical Romance or the Black Parade at all in any way whatsoever, but that same spirit of performance art with lore and stage performance and characters to play, it's still there. It didn't go anywhere. And I wasn't able to realize that this is filling the spot in the absence of the Black Parade. But I was holding on, not letting go, and not seeing what was directly in front of my face. And the same thing can be said about YouTube. I have held on to Unus Annus for so long that only in the making of this video that I realized that there's still that same spirit of YouTube that I touted throughout the entirety of this video. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And there's also another content creator that goes by Super EYEPATCH Wolf, who has become my comfort content creator. And even though I focus on showing my face and dancing around for the camera, and Super EYEPATCH Wolf does a whole bunch of clips where he's talking about video games and media and anime and manga, this video, as well as the one from the beginning of this calendar year, My Liminal Hell, are very much styled in great inspiration after Super EYEPATCH Wolf. Super EYEPATCH Wolf inspired the entire stylistic choice of video essay for this entire thing. Super EYEPATCH Wolf is inspiring me the same way that Unus Annus has inspired me, the same way that Shane and Destry and H3H3 and Internet Comment Etiquette, all of these favorites that I've had in the past, I'm still being inspired now, right here, presently. And I didn't realize it because I was holding on to Unus Annus. Again, the legacy of Unus Annus is best described as intangible because it's going to be different for every single one of us. And there's going to be different takeaways for every single one of us. But something that I like to do is point out commonalities, point out the patterns, and hyperfixate to my own detriment on social media phenomenon. This is what I've spent most of my time on Witch Talk until I quit recently again for the second or third time. Pointing out the patterns in the communities and the major events, pointing out the trends and the rise and fall of social media platforms and content creators. As we hype content creators, they are rising above and then have an opportunity to fall. And this is one of the problems that the old form of YouTube granted us. Something that death also brings is change. Something that death also brings is the need for us to adapt to the changing condition of something no longer being there. So when it comes to the changing condition of YouTube, some of the glory days were filled with top-tier YouTubers that seemed untouchable, put on a pedestal, the way that the algorithm would boost their content, and the way that the people in charge would seem to elevate these creators and favor them over others. It's different now. I'm not saying it isn't there, but moving forward, something that I have noticed in the changing climate and condition is now there are more independent content creators that aren't as superstardom big, but still have quite the following and are able to get by and turn it into a genuine job opportunity and a career path. And it's gonna look more like Super EYEPATCH Wolf or the Boo Review. People that don't really have YouTube backing them up. People that don't have articles being written about them. People that aren't in the greater pop culture zeitgeist, and that's probably a good thing. So we're going to see more, and have been seeing more, of YouTube having died in a sense, and coming back to life in the faces like mine. The faces like yours. The faces like any number of content creators that I'm not privy to that are still doing the thing that I'm talking about. Being inspired and turning that creative spark into the new face of YouTube. It's been almost 3 years at the time of my filming this since the death of Unus Annus. And now I am inspired to make this video, and I am inspired to talk about it on other platforms, and now it is inspiring my own creation in my content. And now I'm talking about it, and the people that watch this are going to talk about this, and then they're going to talk about Unus Annus, and then the people that are going to see Unus Annus are going to talk about Unus Annus, and then their friends are going to talk about it, and then this is the cycle of how it happens. Somebody or some bodies do something that stands out from the crowd, and it inspires those who witness it to do their own thing. When we break it down to its most fundamental parts, Unus Annus doesn't really do anything special. They uploaded one video every day for a year, and at the end of that year, they killed the channel. What is special is the way that they did it. What is special is how they made us feel, the way that they inspired us, the content that is still inspired to be made to this day, the way that you feel remembering Unus Annus, the way that I feel talking about Unus Annus. That's what's special. The legacy of Unus Annus isn't in Unus Annus. The legacy of Unus Annus is in you. The legacy of Unus Annus is in me. It's in everybody that was there. Now that it's no longer around, all it has is us to live on through. And what we do with that, whether we talk about it, make content, make art, whatever we do with it, that is the legacy. And it cannot be defined. It cannot be quantified into simple terms, because the way it made us feel and what we do with that feeling is the legacy of Unus Annus. And honestly, I think that's what is really special about Unus Annus, is that they were able to do it on such a wide scale and stumble into doing it at exactly the right time, that they were able to do it in such a profound way in a time in history that it would be so meaningful to those who were there to tell the tale. And on that note, I think I've gotten to everything that I need to say. This was definitely a long one, so if you are still here, thank you for listening. And as always, take care and much love.